With debate, resuming debate, the l'honorable député de Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
The honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. I've decided to speak again on this return to work legislation for Canada Post employees. Well, it's because it's a very important issue we're dealing with here. We're preparing here. We're on the point of doing something that's never been done in the past. A government should never violate so shamelessly the rights of workers when there's a simple solution here to take off or remove rather the padlocks and put an end to the lockout. If the government had done what it should have done right from the beginning, that's to say put an end to the lockout and allow Canada Post workers to continue working, we would never have needed this bill. Never would Canadian citizens been deprived of their mail. But instead, the government has implemented or tabled a bill that makes a mockery of the workers in this country. It violates the rights of workers and imposes working conditions which are lower or worse than those proposed by management. For 3.5 years, I was a person in uniform. I was part of the military. I've always been proud to wear the Canadian flag. Each time I've travelled in the world, in Europe, in Africa, I was always asked to talk about my country, and I did so with pride. This country, which has always respected the basic rights of its population. I talked about the struggles of our citizens to improve our living standards. For me, in my opinion, I don't think I could have a better life anywhere else than in Canada. And I want my children to grow up here too. This is why I'm asking all my colleagues here from all parties to go beyond partisan politics. We have a major issue before us here. We're not just talking about Canada Post workers who will be affected by this bill. All workers will be hit by the consequences of this bill. This government is taking a position in this conflict. It's taken the boss's side. That's outrageous. It undermines our political institution that we represent here. We're not talking about overpaid employees that benefit from indecent privileges. We're talking about men and women who work very hard, who have substandard wages, who have unstable working conditions, which very often prevent them from having a full family life, and which also creates problems for their health. We're talking about Canadian families who work day in, day out for this country. I think we have to look at the working conditions of Canada Post workers. Some of you will perhaps remember the election campaign that started in 2005 and ended in January 2006 in midwinter and over Christmas. Most of you who campaigned at that time of the year went door to door. The weather was terrible at that time of year. We had to, it was snow up to our knees. We had to climb icy stairs. It was very, very cold. Election campaigns are not very often held over winter, but this is what Canada Post employees face day in, day out. They can't stop and have a coffee just to warm up a bit. They're not asked in when they deliver the mail. In our national anthem that we're so proud of, we say that we protect our rights and our citizens. This is the issue here. First of all, protecting our citizens. When we talk about protecting our citizens, I think that upholding the health and safety of our workers is part of this. We have to ensure that workers are eligible to decent retirement pensions. That's part of that. Protecting our rights. What does this mean? We have to preserve the rights to bargaining for workers in this country. That's part of it also. When I was a nurse, I learned that if I did things for my patients, if I thought for them, I would never help them. To get sustainable change, it's essential to provide them with the tools and the necessary support that they need, but you also have to allow them to resolve their own problems on their own. In this bill, this government is getting involved in this conflict. It shouldn't have done so. It should have just said, put an end to the lockout, come back to the bargaining table and find a way of coming to an agreement, to come to a fairer solution. A fairer solution. Let's talk about that for a moment. In this bill that we've been dealing with for some time now, there's one thing that really disgusts me: the low-wage offer. Canada Post offered a very low wage increase, but this government went one better. And this government should have been clear with everyone about this. For people who are watching on TV this evening, I'd like to say one thing. Your government's not advocating your interests. They're not trying to convince us that this bill is a fail. The government only seems to have the interests of some people at heart, those people who are heads of major corporations, people who make huge profits. Mr. Speaker, the profits made by Canada Post don't come out of the blue. They're due to the hard work of postal employees. And I think that the government should show gratitude to these workers for that. This gratitude could be reflected in legislation that would not offer these workers lower wages than what the corporations offered them. We agree on several issues, Mr. Speaker, on both sides of this House. We agree that workers must get back to work so that all those who use postal services can continue to do so. But there are two ways of achieving this. You can adopt unfair legislation which undermines the workers in this country, or you could stop the lockout and you can allow postal workers to get back to work in a dignified fashion. This is what I would advocate. I would ask the government once again today to renege on their position, this current position. We're here because we have the deep conviction that each and every Canadian deserves respect. Canadians deserve better than this, Mr. Speaker. The government has the power today to prove that it respects Canadians and Canadian workers. Therefore, I would ask my colleagues from all parties, on behalf of all those that we represent here, to remove the padlocks and to vote against this bill if it remains unchanged. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Yukon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just one point I mentioned that was addressed earlier by the NDP, the opposition, was that our side hadn't mentioned anything about people that might take a different perspective in our riding. And I certainly have received emails in support of the Back to Work legislation. I've received emails in support of what would be the opposition's position. But the one thing we're getting here, and I heard this a little bit earlier, is that we're fixating on the suspension of time, that's June 23rd. But, Mr. Speaker, the clock up there is still ticking. And every minute that passes, our colleagues here are making money, but my constituents are losing money. So, and I heard that there are two solutions, but there are actually three. When will the opposition quit thumping their chest, produce solutions, get to a committee of the whole, deal with those, bring your solutions instead of your complaints here, end this debate, and let's get this resolved.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to answer this question through another question. The question I'm asking myself is the following. Why are my Conservative colleagues who have control of this situation, why don't they talk to people in positions of authority to ask them to remove the padlocks? Why are you not putting an end to this lockout? All Canadians are inconvenienced by this lockout. This solution would work for them.
Vancouver Centre.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, again, I listened to very passionate speeches by the members of the New Democratic Party. I know that they believe what they're saying. I agree. We here as Liberals agree that we think that the government bill is actually a bullying bill. It is absolutely unfair. It is decided on what the arbitration outcomes are going to be, etc. But what I'm hearing, though, is that we know that the government is fixated on what their bill says. So they've decided they're not going to change their minds. We have the NDP who is fixated on this filibuster, and they don't seem to want to change their minds. Meanwhile, we're not resolving anything. And I just keep finding myself really frustrated that every hour we talk in this House, nothing is happening. The mail is not flowing, people are not going back to work, we're not deciding on a solution to put the government in its place and say, if you say you're not a bully, then listen to the amendments. Why could we not go to Committee of the Whole and get some amendments on the table? We were asked to come here and find solutions, not to just be intransigent as both sides here are.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Well, once again, Mr. Speaker, we wouldn't need to table amendments if this government did what it has the power to do. That's to say, to ask for an end to the lockout and the removal of the padlocks.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to ask my colleague, elle a mentionné protéger.
Well, she talked about protecting our citizens and our rights. That issue is very important. Now, the government says it wants to settle this situation. Now, what's very important is the following. Does my colleague think that what we're doing here today is a waste of time? I want to know that. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, well, I think what we're doing here today is not a waste of time. We're on the point of going into uncharted territory. We're on the point of violating writers' work. And I think that the time taken to talk about this issue is never a waste of time. Now, if that takes hours and hours to have the government hear reason, well, I think that's worth it, don't you?
Resuming debate, the Honourable